Hello everybody and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to teach you guys some easy patterns that you can use to do what we call Zentangle or doodling or any kind of design. So as you can see, I've split my page into a bunch of different pieces. I'm going to start by teaching you some common borders that you can use. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. So I'm going to start in this little section right here, and the first pattern that I want to teach you is a kind of triangle pattern. So we're going to go ahead and start by drawing out some triangles, just moving up and down, and these you can just kind of eyeball to try and make them all even in size. Now we're going to start from this end right here because it's easiest to go where you can see the full triangle. Then I'm going to just go ahead and draw a line parallel to that line right there and hitting this side. And I'm going to do the same thing, but instead of starting from the end, I'm going to start from that line that we just drew here. And now I'm just going to repeat that pattern again and again. And what I like a lot about this one is that this is kind of a common one. You can do it in a square. You can do it in the kind of like leaf pattern. I will show you guys that one later. And here I'm just filling in the corner here. You can't really see it, but we're going to go ahead and do that. Now I'm going to go ahead and fill in the rest of the triangles here. And I will show you how it looks at the end. And then we will go ahead and move on to the next pattern. Alright, welcome back. So now that we fill that in, you can kind of see what it looks like, and it's really important to try and get the spacing kind of equal, and you can do this by filling in triangles on both sides or just do it on one side. And what you can see for a lot of these patterns is that you can change them to try and do what you want, and if you go back and look at some of my short videos, you can see kind of the way that I've edited them and changed them according to what I'm feeling that day. So let's move on to our next design, and it's going to be really simple, honestly. We're just going to do some vertical and horizontal lines. So we're going to start by doing a certain number, and here I guess you can just count and do like 7 or 8. And with kind of equal gaps, fill that in so that you have the spaces. And then what we're going to go ahead and do is fill in the gaps with horizontal lines. Now this is a really simple pattern, but it's also really kind of satisfying to look at, and it's easier than just straight lines. It gives you a little bit of variety. And the idea with all of these patterns is that you're kind of layering them one on top of each other so that as a whole they look intricate, but you can notice that a lot of these designs are honestly really simple for someone who is just getting started in this space. It can be really easy to start to pick up, and if you want kind of an easy entryway into art that still looks really cool, then this is a great way to try it out. So there we go. That is a kind of easy pattern that we can do right here. And another thing I want to teach you that I use quite commonly are just swirls. And a lot of these, if you look at pictures online of other people doing doodling or Zentangle, you can see these kind of designs in little spaces, and I will fill this up and meet you in a few seconds. Okay, so I've gone ahead and drawn in triangles again. There's a lot you can do with triangles, and I'm going to show you one of the options is just a really simple crosshatch. So you do some straight lines going one way, and I like to leave this one as a little gap right there just to allow you to kind of see the contrast between your designs, and it looks kind of more aesthetically pleasing because it makes sure that you don't have to kind of show the distinction. And then you do have some options here. You could just do straight lines. These are really easy and an easy way to fill in kind of any shapes, especially kind of small areas or gaps. Another thing you could do is literally just color things in, but if you didn't want to do that, you could do a kind of triangle within a triangle pattern and fill that in as well. The key with these kind of patterns really is repetition. So repeating your designs and patterns until it looks kind of aesthetically pleasing. If you look at like optical illusions, you get kind of a similar effect. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat this over the next 3 triangles so you can see what it looks like. Alright, now as you can see, not all of my lines are perfectly straight or perfectly even, but the smaller you make your details and the more you practice, the better they get with time. So now another common thing that you can see in Zentangles is the kind of flower petal or leaf that I was talking about earlier. And so this is something you can see in a lot of detailed artwork, and it's a lot of fun to do too. So one of the easiest ones that I want to talk about is what we just did with the triangles, but this time with the kind of curved shape that you would see on a flower petal. So let me repeat this a couple of times. And again, like I said, with practice, it will get better, and the closer together your lines are and the more detailed you make it, the more aesthetically pleasing it is to look at. And you can do these, you can just draw a bunch of lines on paper and just like practice these. It looks pretty cool all put together, or you can try something different too. So another option you can do with these is draw a line straight down the middle and then just do some diagonal lines going one way, and then some diagonal lines going the other way. So kind of your classic leaf, but with a lot more kind of lines inside. And you can do this if you want them to be parallel. You can do this one at a time, but I just find it's easier to do one side and then do the other side. And the fun thing about these leaves is you also get the negative space. So we're talking about the space right here, and you can do something with that if you want. You can just kind of do something here and you could color it in, and that kind of gives it a little bit more visual variety. Or you could just kind of do, again, repetition. There's a lot of options you can play with here. So now let's go ahead and continue this out. And for here, the petals are something easy you can do. It's just the straight down. And this is something you see quite often when you're drawing flowers. This is a kind of fun idea. And then something else you can do, again, with these, it's nicer when the petals are narrower. So it looks just a little more pleasing. But if you're doing kind of big fat petals like this, then you can also do this one. It's similar to the other one that we just did, but it repeats. So the lines aren't actually touching each other, and it just kind of goes in, and you could color in, or you could just leave it blank. Again, a lot of this is up to you. You can make tiny little changes based on what you find appealing to look at and to draw. So I will come back to you and we can start on the squares. So while we're on the topic of flowers, I'm going to go ahead and teach you how to do kind of the starting of mandala art, which has kind of the flower as a base and it grows outwards. So if you go back and look at some of my short videos, you can see me doing that. You can see some examples of that. So we're going to start with the circle in the center, and I'm just kind of keeping it to a medium size, but if you're doing kind of a big piece of artwork, you might want to start with something bigger. And I'm going to go ahead and start with these tiny little petals. You've probably drawn them a lot when you were little. And the key with these is trying to keep them even in shape and size. And obviously these are not completely even, you can tell, but keeping them tiny and close together. And now the second one that I want to show you is we're going to go kind of with fatter petals. And something I've noticed is that if you mix up the shapes and sizes of these petals, then it looks kind of pleasing for each layer. I'm going to go ahead and do a smaller petal inside and color in. So like I was talking about earlier, having a little bit of variety in parts that are colored in, parts that are more empty is nice, but when you're doing doodling, you kind of always want to kind of like don't leave any blank space. It's kind of the rule of thumb. You want every space to be filled in, and so it looks like wherever the eye is looking, there are details everywhere. So now, once we do that, I'm going to do another layer of these tiny little petals, but we're going to do something slightly different. So you can notice I'm making these slightly bigger, and again, you want to try and keep them all even in sizing. This is a lot easier if you have a kind of compass or protractor or something like that to use to make circles, then you can draw in pencil your circles and make each layer kind of fill out. So now what I'm going to do is just draw a little straight line coming up halfway, kind of like if you look at flowers in nature, you can see kind of a cut down the middle in the petals. So that's just what we're doing right here. And you can see how this looks a little more unique than the other one that we did just now. And you can even connect it all the way if you want. So you're kind of splitting the petal in half. And now another option we have for these big fat petals is to fill in the insides. So we're just going to go one, and instead of coloring it in, we do another one. So you add in layers, and here I'm just doing 2, but you could even do 3. So now I'm going to show you what this looks like as it repeats. So I'll see you back in a few. Alright, now hopefully this gives you an idea of what this looks like when it's kind of taken out, and all I did was just repeat the layers that we already did continuously. And of course you can add on any of these patterns in between and it'll turn into a mandala. Now I want to kind of switch gears and show you a different type of Zentangle that I've seen online a lot before. And to start off, all you need to do is create triangles. You can use a ruler. I used a ruler, freehanded a little bit of this. It doesn't matter what size they are or how they are in relation to each other. If they are kind of this size, like kind of medium to small, that would be great. Now we're going to start from one end and draw a line to the other side of the triangle and end kind of fatter on that side. So I'm not meeting it, it's like kind of moving outwards. Now I'm going to start where I ended and continue and do the same thing this way. So go from small to big. And honestly, if these are thinner, it would be better. So I'm just going to show you what it would kind of look like. And now do the same thing, thick to thin. And now we're going to repeat. Thin to thick, thin to thick, thin to thick. So you're going from the inside to the outside basically of this triangle. And now you're going to keep continuing to do that until you kind of get this kind of illusion. Now I'm going to show you what it looks like if you kind of continue this on. So you want this to look like a fan almost. So on this side I go thin to thick, in to out. And I'm going to go ahead and continue doing that. And the closer together your lines are, the more it looks like an illusion, and you can kind of see the fans forming. It looks almost like a seashell, and I'm freehanding most of the lines on the inside. If you really want them to be straight, I guess you could try a ruler, but most of these are small enough that you can kind of freehand them and you can kind of see what we want going on here. So I'm going to go ahead and fill the rest of this in. And if you are following along back at home, I would encourage you to try out this as well. This is a very simple trick, but it's also very, very fun to do. And you can fill an entire page with this, and it's a really interesting optical illusion. You can try and color it in. And one thing I would say when working with Zentangles or doodles of any kind, working with pen is probably going to be your preferred kind of medium compared to pencil, just because pen is bolder, it pops more, and a lot of this with Zentangle is already quite time consuming. So instead of having to trace, if you can go ahead and start with the pen, it would really speed up the process. And you can also, it gives you a kind of confidence, you just kind of have to roll with it, even if you make tiny mistakes. Part of doing Zentangle and doodling is to just kind of roll with the mistakes. So as you can see, this is starting to come together. So let me go ahead and fill the rest of this in. Okay, so now you have an idea of what it looks like all together and kind of the optical illusion that it is. So we can do something very similar, but this time we don't have to do all triangles. We can have all sorts of different shapes. And basically we're going to do the same thing, except instead of going thin to thick, we're just going to keep our lines parallel and kind of repeat what we did earlier with parallel lines that just continue. So you just keep on going inner and inner, and you can do this with almost any shape, and this is one of my favorite kind of designs to do. And there we go. It looks pretty interesting. And obviously the more parallel and close we get our lines, the cooler it looks. So I'm not going to do this whole square. I'll just do half to show you. And we'll move on to the next illusion. All right, so now that that's done, you can kind of see the way it looks, and it looks pretty cool. And the more kind of different shapes you do, the cooler it looks. Now the next one we're going to do in this square right here is one called waves, and basically we're going to do a couple different shapes and then fill them in with lines. That's kind of the way that most patterns work. So first I'm going to create a kind of curved pattern. So I'm drawing a curve and then I'm bringing it right over, and it looks a lot like a wave. And we're going to go ahead and fill this in, and it's going to start kind of fat on the bottom but then come into the top right here. And now another pattern you can do is the same thing, but instead of just curving it, I'm going to make it like a circle. And so we can do the same thing here, but it kind of curves into itself. So it's kind of got a rounded tip. And now another way that we can do this is curve it in and around and then do the same thing. So the tip is the same, but you're just curving it one more time. And so this one I would recommend practicing with pencil once or twice before you go ahead and get started. And so like here, I want to end here, but I want it to start with that curve right there. So I'm giving myself a guiding line from the middle, and then I kind of fill in the parts that I can't see, and there we go. And so now I'm just going to repeat this, and I'm going to kind of use different directions and make each one look slightly different so that it looks a little more organic. And this one is quite fun to do, especially because you have a little bit more creative freedom in how you want to do the little curves, and this can be really fun to do. So I'm going to go ahead and fill it up a little bit. Okay, so now moving on, I want to show you a couple of different options that you can do within a checkerboard pattern. So I've drawn some slightly uneven squares here. And so option number one is very similar to what we did up here. So we're going to just do lines going one way, and every other one is going to be vertical. So just like a checkerboard, we're going to do one going like this, and then all of the opposite ones are going to be horizontal. And the easiest way to do this is fill in all of the vertical ones first so that you don't lose track and mess up, which I have done many times when I try and alternate them. And this is just kind of an easy pattern to do. It looks kind of interesting. And then option number two is kind of a repetition of what we did here and what we did here. So we're going to do those parallel lines going inwards. And with these, the more even you make them, the nicer it is to look at. And with these, you also want to try and make sure that your squares are equal in width and in length, because that way the pattern can continue. Whereas if you got a kind of rectangle, then you can kind of obviously see what is going on there. And so again, I'm going to repeat this for one more row. You can even alternate this with kind of filling one square in. There are a lot of options when you're doing squares. And another option, let me go ahead and finish out this row here, and I'll show you one more option that you can do within squares. And this looks more interesting when you have a kind of thicker pen to do a distinct line in. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a line diagonally across. I'm kind of making it a little thicker. And what I want to go ahead and do is draw lines going parallel one way and then going perpendicular the other direction. And then this time I switch it, so I'll go vertical on this side and horizontal on this side. And this is kind of an interesting illusion that you can do. So that's another way that you can utilize squares. Now our final one is pretty self-explanatory, and so what I'm going to go ahead and do is create just kind of these blobs and leave a little space in between. Oop, my marker is running out. And what we want to do is just go ahead and repeat that. So fill it in carefully and just continue doing that, and you can even alternate, fill one in, leave one blank. For each of the rows, you have some options here. And this is kind of a really easy way to fill your space because you're just creating blobs and just kind of tracing them in. But if you do it really close together, and my marker's kind of running out, but you get the idea of what it might look like. And now I want to show you a couple of examples of what it looks like when you put all of these together, and the more you practice, you can try and put them together in different ways. So this is an example of, I was kind of designing my sketchbook cover, and on this side you can see I started with the kind of mandala patterns that I talked about, and I filled in and added some of the other border patterns that you can see here. So I used circles, and having a thicker Sharpie in the middle to just kind of alternate really helps the colors pop. And then here, all I did was just put vertical lines of different lengths and then fill each of them with a different pattern. So you can come and look at this if you would like some ideas. And this is something that I've done before that is, you can see a lot of the patterns that I just showed you here. This one right here, this one right here, this one, this one, this one, all of them are from what we just looked at here, so you can easily do it. This one is slightly different, but again, it's just kind of drawing straight lines and filling them in, but you're constantly changing the angles there. And then this one is a mandala piece. So again, you can see a lot of the repeated designs here, but when you put them together in different combinations, they look quite different. Thank you so much for watching my video. I hope this helped, and I hope you can use this to kind of try out your own designs. It's a lot of fun, and it's really a great way to relieve stress and calm down and kind of just play with art. So thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment, and let me know how it goes. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.